everybody, welcome to Robin's house. Today I'm going to go over some of the tips for dry embossing and using those embossing folders that you have. So the Serenity card and scrap workshops both use the dry embossing as an optional technique. So the first page has dry embossing and then sanding. The second page and one of the cards has dry embossing and then inking. And this one you can see is inked a little less than this one. And then the third page has a technique where you actually ink the embossing folder, not the paper. So I'm going to go over those three techniques with you. And I'm also going to talk to you about the plating on your embossing folder. So the plates that you have, I actually keep two separate plates. I have my magnetic plate and my plastic plates for metal die cuts. And then I have my regular platform and some plates for my embossing folders because I find that they are a different width, but as it is, this stack is perfectly ready for embossing at any time. I don't have to add any shims or do anything. And then this one is perfectly ready for die cuts at any time. So I have found it more helpful to have two separate plates for each purpose rather than trying to fuss with it each time I have to change between equipment. So for our first item is the dry embossing with sanding. And this is actually, well, I'm sure you know, this is a very easy technique, very simple, very fast. And you can even make changes along the way as you see fit. For example, when you're sanding, you could do a light dusting that hardly touches anything at all, or you could sand off the entire top layer so that it is a very distinct and different look. You can even see on here how this one is barely touched and this one is quite bright, quite white, and very pretty in its own way. You could also do something a little different in that you could sand the opposite side so that your flower images stay brown, but it's actually the background that starts to disappear. So it may not be a look that you want on your flowers, but it might be a look that you want on your subway tiles or on your lattice or, you know, the diamond. So, you know, it's just a technique that's available to you. The second way is embossing and then inking. So, for example, on this card, you could easily just emboss it and then do nothing if you wish. But inking is so fast and easy because all you do is you take your ink and your sponge and you brush it over the top lightly until some ink starts to show up. And you see that I did some dark side over here and the light side over here. It just depends on how much ink you put on and how much you wish. And then there's a third way of inking your project that you just take the ink pad directly and drag it over the top of your papers. And again, this may not be what you're looking for on your flower projects, but it might be what you're looking for on something else. So it creates a much, much darker design for you than just what a sponge could do. This is also great if you're, you know, on boy projects or something. Obviously, you wouldn't be using flowers. So again, that diamond or the snow or the random circles or whatever would be very nice for this. So on the card, it was nice and easy because this is all within the size of your your embossing folder, but the page is not. The page is a 12-inch piece of paper. So when I was doing the Close to My Heart folders have a hole in them, you see. So as you're running your paper through, you can run it through, and we'll do that here. So you can run that paper through. And just quickly push it forward. And I don't think that this one has a perfectly perfect matchup, as in the bottom perfectly matches the top, so you can just put it in with an effortless change. But when I finished my project here, if you didn't know it was here, right here is where my changeover happened, you can't even tell. It's completely mixed into the layout, and you can't even tell that there was a change in there. Now, if your embossing folder happens to not be one of the Close to My Heart ones, here we can take my Close to My Heart one out and see again. So we have this line here. However, most other brands are also 6 to 7 inches long. You could easily put it in one way, turn it around, and put it through another way, however long you needed it to be, and that would be perfectly acceptable as well. I just like the handiness of just pushing it through. So then this one is the same. You would just take your ink, your sponge, and your ink, and just add some color to this exactly the same way that you did on the card. Now the last way of doing this is very, very interesting. As with, well, I guess I should back up a little bit. As with our papers, we have a dark side, the actual side, and then the lighter side. So as you're doing your project, you need to pay attention to which side is up. For example, on my project, the dark side is up with the flowers sticking out. And on this one, my sample, the light side has the flowers sticking out. So you need to make sure which side you're working with when you are doing that. So on this side, you can feel the shape of the flowers, and that means that those flowers are going to be pushing up. So whatever side you want, if I want the light side, I'm going to need those flowers pushing up. And then this side has the negative space of the flowers, so it's going to be catching those ones that are pushed up. So just be aware of which shape you want going which direction. And then that will be a little bit even more important on this next technique, where we are adding ink to the embossing folder itself. And for context, so here is the piece that we're doing, and we want to add ink, not to the flowers, but to the background. So let's see how we do that. So we get our embossing machine, get it ready, and we get our stacks to be ready. So what I want to do is I want to put my ink on the debossed side, the side that doesn't have the flowers pushing up. And that is because if you were to put it on the flower side, just because there is less space, you would get ink on the background of this one as well. So there would be ink on the flowers and on the background because there's so much space in there for the ink to fall in. But on this side, the side creating the background, not the raised flowers, it's almost all, it's ready to accept the ink because it is it's mostly solid on this side. So I just drag my ink over the top of the whole thing. And then I'm going to lay my pieces down. So on this one, I want the dark side to be up. So I can put both of those pieces. And then I'm, now that they're ready to go through the machine, yes, I am gonna re-ink it again just to have it be fresh. And then I'm also going to quickly spritz it, because the spritz will help it, but not drench it, just spritz it. The spritz will help the ink even out a little bit. So let's see if we are successful. Okay, there we go. So we have two pieces where the background is much, much darker than the flowers themselves. And it even looks a little splotchy, which is pretty cool. The one that I did before, when I forgot to spritz, ended up with some interesting looking line. Oh, you can't even tell. How close can we get? Some interesting looking lines that you can see on there. So no matter how you end up doing it, it will still be nice. And if they all look the same, then it will look like that's exactly how you intended it to be. So, and then of course you're gonna want to clean off your items with a paper towel. So that is some fun techniques for using your dry embossing folders on your cards and on your layouts. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you learned some new things. Happy crafting!